Ask any sporting champion or great musician whether they achieved their mastery and their excellence without considered structure and disciplined practice. Most modern men have developed a strange relationship with discipline. We associate it with restriction and pressure, punishment and force. But what if discipline was never the opposite of freedom? What if discipline was actually the path to freedom? David, William, Pearce, welcome back. And this week I've been reflecting deeply on something from Tantric teaching called Jnana Shakti, the power of knowing. The power of knowledge is not intellectual information for its own sake, but embodied understanding. The kind of understanding that transforms how you live. Because knowledge alone changes very little. But embodied knowledge, that changes everything. Anyone who achieved greatness didn't do so by avoiding structure, but through devotion to their craft, repeating the fundamentals, practicing deliberately, training consistently, until eventually the structure disappeared into embodiment. The musician no longer thinks about technique, and the athlete no longer consciously thinks about their movement. The body just simply knows. And Tantra teaches the same thing spiritually. Discipline is not the enemy of freedom. Discipline is what allows freedom to become embodied. In Tantric teaching, this power of knowing, Jnana Shakti, is the fifth of the 5+1 powers of an embodied being. Despite being the last of the powers, it has incredible importance, because desire, inspiration, and potential alone are not enough. You can want to become healthier, to have more success, to find a relationship, but unless desire becomes organized through understanding and practice, very little changes. And I think many men know this feeling intimately. We know we're capable of more, and yet we continue repeating the same old patterns, overthinking, distracting ourselves with cheap dopamine, avoiding responsibility through escapism and inconsistency. Not because we're weak, but because our energy is leaking. And this week I've been reflecting deeply on that in my own life. I decided to go sober for May, including sexual sobriety, partly in solidarity with those in MTY, but also because I genuinely wanted a deeper understanding of myself and mastery of my own energy. Not from a place of shame, but because I believe sexuality is powerful. In Taoist and Tantric traditions, sexual energy is understood as life force energy, creative power, the very energy capable of creating life as if from nothing. You can't get more God than that. And when that energy leaks unconsciously through compulsive behavior, distraction, overstimulation, or constant dopamine seeking, a man slowly loses access to his vitality, to his clarity and direction, his presence and his power. And honestly, I began noticing how subtle some of those energy leaks were in my life, not just sexually, but through relationships, where my attention was going and how I was using social media. And as I've returned to Instagram, I immediately felt old behavioral patterns beginning to reappear, checking unnecessarily, scrolling automatically, my attention fragmenting. And I remembered something important, that where attention goes, energy flows. That energy is attention. Attention is energy. That's where your life goes. So I began placing structure around my usage, not to restrict myself, but to protect what matters more to me. And honestly, this is a huge part of the work I'm doing through men's transformational yoga, helping men reconnect to their energy, to discipline and purpose again. Not through shame or fake alpha performance, not through motivational hype, but through structure, awareness, and conscious practice. Because most men don't need more information. We need integration, support in becoming the man that you already know you're capable of being. So if something in that speaks to you, head to the description where more information is waiting for you. So one of the deepest things I'm beginning to understand is this. Structure does not reduce freedom. Quite the contrary. Unconsciousness reduces freedom. Compulsion and addiction, distraction, they all reduce freedom. Because freedom is not simply doing whatever you want in the moment. Freedom is having conscious relationship to the choices that you make. Your habits, your attention, your energy. This is why discipline becomes not just important, but sacred. Discipline creates coherence and allows energy to become focused instead of fragmented. And focused energy is power. Tantra teaches that consciousness naturally wants fuller expression. It wants to express itself through you. There's something within you that genuinely wants to expand. It wants to create and love and move towards deeper embodiment. But modern life constantly fragments that movement. We're exposed to endless notifications. Our attention is hijacked by algorithms. We end up comparing ourselves and over-consuming. And eventually, a man can become so externally stimulated that he loses connection to his own internal direction entirely. He no longer knows what genuinely energizes him, only what temporarily distracts him. But when structure enters consciously, something changes. Energy begins consolidating. Attention returns, presence deepens, and clarity sharpens. And slowly, the deeper self begins expressing more freely. Not because you've forced yourself into becoming someone else, but because the noise reduced enough for your real nature to emerge again. So this week's contemplation is this. Where in your life might greater structure, study, discipline, or understanding actually help you feel more inspired and energized, allowing your deeper nature to express itself more fully and more freely? Because discipline is not punishment. At its highest level, discipline is devotion. Devotion to the life and the person you know is possible for you to live in and become. And honestly, I think more modern men are starving for this. Not for more pressure or performance, but for grounded structure, for counsel and practice, so they can have direction and a space to become better together. And that's the vision I have for men's transformational yoga. So if you're ready to go from knowing better to doing better, then follow the link in the description to apply. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next transmission. Cheers.